Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Truma is Pedic Tes, Halacha Beis. We're learning today Daf Peches, and we are starting on Daf Peches Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Amid by the new Mishnah. Now, what we started out in Pedic Chi, Hazareya Truma, we started out learning the consequence of the rule that Gedulei Truma is Truma. The emes is we never yet spoke out why is it that Gidulei Truma. And just to clarify what we are asking, when something is planted, as we will continuously see throughout the sugya, we always have to bear in mind the differentiation between davar shezarei kala versus davar she'ein zarei kala. So the few types of products that Hashem made its nature, that when you plant it, it does not decompose. So the item, if the item, let's say, is truma, and you put that in the ground, well, okay, then that continues to be truma, even though we already spoke 2 days ago, there will be times that it will be nullified, but that's more understandable. But when something is davar shezarei kala, which is the norm, then you should know, we know that be'emes, biblically, when you plant truma, it decomposes, it's no longer truma. Gedulei Truma is a Gezeda de Rabbanan, and we're going to, before we start learning the Mishnah, after we share the words of introduction, we're going to go to Gemara, Bavli Shabbos, where we have over there 2 opinions as to why did the Chachamim say Gedulei Truma, and as we will see in today's daf, that our Gemara as a given will only be following one of the 2 opinions, which will be the opinion of Rava, as we will see soon. But that was the base of this Pedic, Gedulei Truma. Now, what we have to speak out in more detail, even though we already made little mentions of it, is that what about all other items that have some sort of qualification or kedusha? Do we also say over there that if they were planted, even davar shezarei kala midrabanan, they retain their status? As an example, tevel. Now, when something grows, just normal tevel, prior to its gemar melacha, one is allowed to snack from it. You can eat achilas aray prior to its gemar melacha. Once something is considered a finished product, you may not even snack from it. Okay, what happens if I have tevel that reached its gemar melacha? So there's already a status of real tevel. You can't even take a snap of it, and someone planted that tevel. Davar shezarei kala. The Mishnah will tell you that we don't say al derech gedulei truma. We don't say that the new tevel that grows, since it came from tevel, that you may not even have achilas aray, it will never be allowed to be snacked from. We don't say that. What we say is b'davar shezarei kala. Since it decomposed, what came now is brand new tevel. And the truth is, the same is true for meiser rishon, as we'll speak out, meaning meiser rishon that you did not remove trumas meiser. The same is true with svichei shvius. The same is true with trumas chutz la'aretz. Even though it's midrabanan truma, we don't say gedulei truma. Same is said with meduma. You plant meduma. We don't say that which grows is meduma. No, it goes back to it being a normal product, a normal tevel product. Same is with bikurim. Same is with gedulei hegdish, and the same is with ma'aser sheni. In other words, the only place where we say gedulei truma is only by truma. And that will be the first part of the Mishnah. The Gemara that we will learn today will explain why don't we make the Gezeda by all of the items that we just mentioned. And also the Mishnah, when it formulates this halacha, it puts together all of the items that we mentioned in 2 different groups. It puts together tevel, meiser rishon, svichei shvius, trumas chutz la'aretz, meduma, bikurim in one stanza, in one clause, and it puts together gedulei hegdish and meiser sheni in another clause. Because Gedulei Hegdish and Meiser Sheni are different from all the items that we mentioned above. And nevertheless, Gedulei Hegdish and Meiser Sheni between themselves also have a difference, as we'll see in the Gemara. That will be the first topic in the Mishnah. The second topic in the Mishnah will be something also fascinating. We'll be speaking about someone who planted Gedulei Truma. You planted Truma. What grows now is Gedulei Truma. It's still Mechubar Lakarka. So you have a row of Gedulei Truma. The Mishnah gives an example. You have 100 rows of Gedulei Truma, and you have 1 row of Chulin. And you don't know which one is which. And the Mishnah is going to tell you that if you take a product from this 101 rows, you can presume that it's chulin. Gedule truma, which is a rabbinic law, is very easy to undo. We can be very lenient, like in the case that we just gave. That will be the second topic of the Mishnah, and that this will be our Hagdama. But before we go inside, so in the Sechta Shabbos, right, the sugya really begins on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. When we quote this the whole time. When the Mishnah says that ve'elu min ha'alocha she'amru b'aliyas Hananya ben Chizkiya ben Gorin, that what she'olu levakroi, and there was a time that in this edict that there were more Talmidei Beishamai on Beis Hillel, and because of that they closed the doors and they voted on many different halachic discussions. And nimnu v'rabu Beishamai al Beis Hillel v'shmeina aser dvarim gazru b'ay bayin. So it's known, it's good to remember, there's something called the Shmeina Asar Davar, the 18 enactments. Many of them, or most of them, are related to the rules of Tum and Tara. And we paskin Kishitas Beishamai. One of the Shmeina Asar Davar, Bavli Shabbos Yud Zayin Amud Beis, Af Gedule, Mamash on the top line, Af Gedule Truma, this rabbinic law, that if you planted Truma, even Bedavar Shazari Kala, that which grows as truma is boy bayim gazru. That was one of the shmeina asar davar. Now, why is it? My tama in Bavli, two reasons. Reason number one, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Gezeira mishum truma tohira biyad Yisrael. It's amazing that we are afraid. Listen to this, Aviv. I'm a Yisrael. I separated truma. What do I need to do with my truma now? Now that I separated it, I have to give it to a kohen. If my planting it will render it back into normal chulin, normal tevel, I might be tempted not to do the mitzvah fully, which is to give it to the kohen. I separated the truma to be misakin my tevel, selfishly. And now I'm going to take the truma and I'll plant it. So the Chachamim says, hey, you're going to do that? Whatever grows as truma, you're not going to benefit anything. That is Rabbi Chanina. Amar Rava, no, I can't. That cannot be the reason, because if we're speaking about such a person that might do that, is why would he even separate truma? Of course, we're speaking about someone that doesn't want to eat tevel. But biblically, how much do you need to separate for it not to be tevel? One kernel for the whole pile. Such a person wouldn't go through the trouble of separating 2% and then planting it. He'll take away one kernel. So Elo Amar Rava. And now this second reason in the Bavli is the only reason that we'll have in the Yerushalmi, even though the Yerushalmi doesn't even say it. But everything that we'll learn today, as we'll point out on occasion, will imply that the Yerushalmi's understanding of the reason for Gedule Truma is not like Rabbi Chanina, yes, like Rava. And what does Rava say? Mishum Truma Temeya B'yad Kohen. A person who separates Truma is going to give it to the Kohen. Okay, but we also know that if that truma became tamei before you gave it to the kohen, after you gave it to the kohen, the only thing the kohen can use with truma tameya is he can use it for fuel. So a kohen will tell himself, why should I burn it? I'll plant it. At least there's a lot more value in kernels if they are planted versus if you throw them into the fireplace. And by the way, what's wrong with that? And what's this cheshbon? B'davar shezarei kala. So what that it's tummy, it's going to decompose. What comes new is tevel. I know it's tevel. But at least I'll be able to benefit from it more than just for fuel. And the problem is, Dilma mashi lo gabei v'asile deitakol. That's the fear. That since he's going to decide to plant it, before him planting it, him or someone else will forget that it's tummy and eat truma tameya. This is the reason, as we will see, from what the Gemara says over here, this is our understanding of why Gedule Truma. And now, without any further ado, let's begin with the Mishnah. So, Chavre Daf Peiches, 4 lines from the top, Halacha Beis. Mishnah opens up with the words Gedule Truma, as we just explained. Trade of Truma Tameya B'yad Kohen. However, there's a limit to that. What's the limit? The Gedule Narchulin. If the seeds of the Truma growth, you have Gedule Truma, it has seeds. If you planted those seeds, we don't schlep it la'olam vad. Gedule Truma. So now that it's Truma, you plant it again. It's Gedule. We don't do that. It's Truma, but it's Gedule Truma. And that's where we put the limit. And if you do it again, the new growth is normal tevel. Avol, The aval is not for the gedule in chulin. Aval is, however, gedule truma is only by truma. And now, I know we spoke it out in the intro, but we'll explain every case. So tevel. So tevel is, like we said, once tevel reaches its gemar melacha, you're not even allowed to eat from it achilas aray. Prior to tevel reaching its gemar melacha, you are allowed to eat from it achilas aray, however you define snacking. What happens if a person has tevel that reached gemar melacha, they didn't tithe anything yet, for whatever reason, they planted it. If we were to apply the same din of gedule truma to tevel, then we would have said gedule tevel is tevel. Well, you're going to say lamay nafkamina, it's tevel anyways. No. Then we would say that even though this new gedule tevel did not reach gemar melacha, it came from tevel that was already asur b'achilas aray. So this may never be eaten achilas aray. That is something that one might have thought. For that, the Mishnah says that avol by tevel we don't say gedule tevel. We do say that even though the status of what you planted was asur to eat it achilas aray, but now that you planted it and it decomposed, everything we're learning in the Mishnah is only b'davar shezarei kala. Now it's you start brand new, and brand new prior to its gemar melacha. Yes, you are allowed to snack from it.
And everything, or that. Well,
no, because it decomposed. And now you have a new product. Now, you're asking that question because we learned the Braisa 2 days ago and we repeated it yesterday. Let's go on the Mishnah. Next case will be Ma'aser Rishon. We're speaking about Ma'aser Rishon, that you did not yet separate from it Trumas Ma'aser. Okay? And what's the din, Aviv? You may not eat this Ma'aser Rishon, because you didn't separate Trumas Ma'aser. You may not even snack from it. Once you begin tithing, you took Ma'aser Rishon, you can't do anything with it. Same idea. You planted the Ma'aser Rishon. No one would think that everything that grows is Ma'aser Rishon. It's gedule truma is a chumrah, not a kula. But you would think that you can't even snack from it. We don't say that. That if you planted Ma'aser Rishon, what grows is brand new. Now, we also know from the Braisa that we learned 2 days ago, Aviv, to your point, aside of it being brand new, which is a leniency, we don't say it's asur to eat b'achilas aray. Aside of that, if you planted an onion, which is something she'ein zarei kala, you also have to resolve the trumas ma'aser on that which you planted. I'm not going to say this in the Mishnah because our Mishnah is very important. All of the items in the avol, tevel, Ma'aser Rishon, we'll see, sfichei shvius, meduma, we'll see. All of them is only b'davar shezarei kala. So since you put the Ma'aser Rishon in the ground and it decomposed, we're not going to be machmer, gedule Ma'aser Rishon, which would mean what? Not that it belongs to the Levi, which would mean that you can't even eat it achilas aray, because when you planted it, it was asur b'achilas aray. It's normal tevel. Next case, sfichei shvius. So for those of us who learned Masechta Shvius over here in the Yerushalmi, we remember that mid Rabbanan, not in all cases, but in many cases, perhaps in most cases, items that grow on their own, spontaneous growth, seeds from the last year's yield were blown into the ground, were taken into the ground by the bees, or however it is that Hashem put B'teva ha'olam, and it grew on its own. Midrabanan, you're not allowed to eat it because the Chazal were afraid that someone will plant on Shvius and claim it's Tzvicha. Okay, can't eat it. What happens if you take the seeds from Tzvichei Shvius, Aviv, and you plant it? If we would have applied the logic of Gedulei Truma, what would the din be? Just like Midrabanan, you cannot eat Tzvichim, you should not be allowed to eat any of the Gedulim. We don't say that. Now, guys, we're not talking about someone who planted it on Shvius. No. That's another din. What's planted on Shvius cannot be eaten. We're speaking about someone who planted it on the next year, the 8th year. No, we don't say Svichei Shvius. Another din. Trumas Chutz La'aretz, which is only Truma Midrabanan. Now, we know it's not in all of Chutz La'aretz, but it's in the countries that are surrounding Eretz Yisrael. It's Eretz Shinar and Mitzrayim. And then you have the Ammon and Moav. We learned this all together. So bottom line is that midrabanan you have to tithe from those locations, and if you planted that which was truma, we don't say gedulei truma. Next is meduma. Okay, so you have meduma. Meduma meaning that there was a mixture of truma and chulin. You did not have the ratio of 100 to 1. You did not have that. Therefore, a non-kohen cannot eat it. Someone planted meduma. We don't say, well, what grows is meduma. We don't say that. What grows is banafai tevel. Vahabi kudim. Same thing. Kudim was given to a kohen. We don't say that if someone planted the bikurim, everything that grows has a status of bikurim, nisht. We say what grows is brand new tevel. In all of these cases, giduleim are chulin. And the Gemara will go one by one and explain, taka, why not? And the only logic the Gemara is going to contrast all of these with gedulei truma will be predicated on what we quoted from the Bavli Shitas Rava. You have to know the reason why gedulei truma, and the Gemara will point out that reason, and there's only one reason here, because we are afraid of atakala. If a kohen were to keep his truma tameya, that is not shaykh by all of the cases that we mentioned. The Mishnah now will mention two new cases, but as you see, the Mishnah puts these two new cases in a new clause, and there's a reason for that. Even though b'chitzonius, the Mishnah seems to be saying the same exact thing, which is gedulei hegdesh. We're talking about bedek habayis hegdish. This is important. Okay? So someone wanted to make a donation to the Holy Temple. Some people pledge money. Some people pledge something that is dear to them to show Hashem that they're giving that which is dear to them, and then they redeem it. It wasn't redeemed yet. Someone donated their field to the bedek habayis. And on the field, when they gave it, or later, now you have a product. Now, what happens if someone plants that wheat? What would you think? You're kidding? It's hegdish. So it should belong to Hegdish. We don't say that. Same thing with Maisa Sheni. Same thing with Maisa Sheni, that what if you planted Maisa Sheni? We don't say that everything that grows is Maisa Sheni, but there is a however. And this however is only by Gedulei Hegdish and Maisa Sheni. And that is that, let's say what I planted, let's say by Gedulei Hegdish was one saw stump. I'm just going based on what the Braisa says. The Braisa gave numbers that what grows is 10 times more than what you planted. Okay? Lamashal, I planted one saw of Hegdish, and now 10 saw grew. So even though we are saying that we don't say Geduli Hegdish, okay, but I planted Hegdish. And Patr v'loy klum, normally for me to have benefit from Hegdish, I have to redeem it. I have to redeem it. Same thing with Maisa Sheni. Maisa Sheni, first of all, should take it to Yerushalmi and eat it there. I don't have to do that. I can redeem it. Over here, we're not saying that everything that grows from Maisa Sheni is Maisa Sheni. Oh, but the Maisa Sheni that you put on the ground had to be redeemed. So here the Mishnah points out in both of these cases, you have to redeem them. Upoida oisam, but not the quantity of what you have right now. If we would have said al derech gedulei truma, if we would have said gedulei hegdish, if we would have said gedulei Maisa Sheni, and you want to redeem it, then you would have to redeem the 10 saw that grew. No, the Mishnah says, no, don't do that. You don't have to redeem all of what grew, but the original of what you planted, you have to do. Poida oisam bisman zira'am. Now, I want to add a detail that this din upoida oisam bisman zira'am, and not more by hegdish and Maisa Sheni, is even if the seeds do not decompose, as we will see in the Gemara. It's important what I'm saying. Really, the reason why the Mishnah separates, why didn't the Mishnah put them all together? Tevel, Maisa Rishon, Svichei Shvis, right? Trumas Chutz La'aretz, Meduma Bikurim, Geduli Hegdish, Umaisa Sheni. The Mishnah should have said it right then. Giduleim Chulin. No, Giduleim Chulin, and Nachamal, Geduli Hegdish, Umaisa Sheni Chulin. The difference between the last two and everything above is by the last two, we do not differentiate whether Zarei Kala or Ein Zarei Kala. And what I'm saying now is a leniency. In other words, you would think by Hegdish is more Chamor. Even B'davar She'ein Zarei Kala, we don't say from the onion bulb is Hegdish, we don't say that. The new growth is Bechlal not Hegdish. But you always have to be paid what you put into the ground. Now, Avada, you have to be paida if Ein Zarei Kala. There's no Chiddush there. Even b'davar shezarei kala. So what you put in the ground doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't matter. Here the Chachamim says what you put in the ground. So there's a chumrah and a kula. You have to redeem a lot more in the Gemara. A lot more in the Gemara. So this is the first topic of the Mishnah. And God willing, we're going to, which will start right now. The Ezras Hashem will be tomorrow. Now this is fascinating. Now we're coming back to Gedulei Truma. Gedulei Truma is Truma. B'chlal, we know that when it comes to bittul, we know the rule that something that's mechubed is never batal. So, for example, remember the Mishnah and the Arla, that imagine you have one you have 1,000 non-Arla trees, and one Arla tree. Now, of course, if you can see that it's a brand new tree, there's nothing to worry about. But often that you don't know which one is which. Arla's batal, the fruits echad b'mosayim. But if it's planted to the ground, if you have one Arla tree in 1,000 and 10,000, none of them are allowed to be eaten because none of them are batal. When you look at those trees, you can even use the concept of kol kavua kemerza al merza. When something is planted, it's not getting mixed. So each one, either it's the Arla or not the Arla. And you're machmer. You know why? Because by Arla, it's a doiraisa. Gedulei truma is a derabanan. So here we're going to flip it in the opposite direction. Meya legina shel truma. If a person planted gedulei truma, which they shouldn't have, but they did. And they have right now, Herst 100 rows, and they only have one row of chulin. I don't know who's doing that. If Vlad is doing that, it's freilich though. That's an anti-Semitic accusation against the Russians. I saw Vlad's name on the thing over here. Nothing to do with him. Someone is using his name. Okay, Mistamet's Kavan. Let's blame Kavan. Doesn't matter. As long as we can see each other somewhere. So you have one is of chulin.
Looked like it was Michael.
Because now I see Michael, correct. But before I saw your name, Vlad. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Kavan is quiet. That means he's the guilty one. So bottom line is, can you eat it or not? Can a non-kohen eat it? Says the Mishnah that kulan mutarin. Can you imagine? You're speaking about the 100 bat, huh? No, he's going in. It's just a guzma in the opposite direction. Normally, 1 in 100 is 1 of truma and 100 of chulin. Here it's 100 of truma. You only have 1 of chulin. So only 1 of chulin, and you would say just like truma is batal be'echad be'meya, even midrabanan. So you would think the chulin is batal. So no, we don't say that. The chulin is good enough to make everything mutter. Kula mitarim. Wow, but only bedavar shezarei kala. This is extremely important. So guys, let's read the Mara Fulda. I think it's like 7 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Kulan mutarim. So this is very big kula. And a chanami. Kula hi sheikilu. Bigdu le truma. The aruga. Even though there's only acha shel chulen, that is mater, even me aruga shel truma. But that's only bedavar shezarei kala. Keep your finger in the marafuld. Avo back in the Mishnah. Avo bedavar she'ein zarei kala. There we say the opposite. Afilu meya shel chulin va'acha shel truma. Let's read in the marafulda. Avo be'ein zarei kala hu behepech echa shel truma is oiseres meya chulin. Why? Because this din that truma's bottle echad b'meya is only when it's detached. The way we do say the same when there's a taroivis of talush, but this is not talush. I'm going to use the word of kol kavua kemerza al merza. That's one way of looking at it, because it's not mixing. It's stuck in the ground. So there we say that kulam asurim. Now there's a chiddush here. And the chiddush is that even bedavar she'ein zaroi kala, we mentioned this 2 days ago in the Braisa, even bedavar she'ein zaroi kala, the new growth biblically is not truma. Her shleima, the new growth. So don't say because it's asur doiraisa. I want to say by derabanan you're lenient. It's not that. It's not that. What is it? We'll unpack. We'll get familiar with this. We have to become familiar with the differences between davar shezarei kala and davar she'ein zaroi kala. Now, says the Mishnah, that hatevel, Gidulav mutarin, which is what we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, and I pointed it out, that the only area where we did not differentiate between Dover Shezare Kala, Dover She'ein Zare Kala was Hegdish and Meiser Sheni. Remember that. But in the first items in the Mishnah, like beginning with Tevel, there, Hatevel, Gidulav Mutarim Bidover Shezare Kala. Let's, before your turn, look inside the last Marafulda. Gidulav Mutarim, what was the issue? I explained. The issue is that once Tevel reaches Gemar Malacha, you can't even have a snack. If you would have said that Gedule Tevel, then you would argue, well, if I planted something after its Gemar Malacha, then what grows may never be snacked of. We don't say that. Mutarim Bachilas Are, says the Marafulda. Kemoy Ho'echel Tevel, Shaloi Nigmar Malachi. Hachinami, Kishoachal Oisam Gedulam. Before the Gedulim reached the Nigmar Malachta, Machilas Arai, that is what the Mishnah was saying. There we say it's permitted. Why? Because we don't say Gedulei Tevel Tevel. But now the Mishnah is making it clear, that's because the original Tevel, that was already Asr Bachilas Arai, decomposed. Daf Peiches Amid Beis. Aval Bidovar She'ein Zaroi Kala. But if we're speaking about items that even after you planted, the way Hashem made it, it's not that it decomposes. No, like an onion bulb. What you put under the ground remains, and then it begins to add more and more klipos, more and more growths. There we say, Gedulin Asurin. Not only is Gedulav Her Shleima. Tevel, again, Tevel is Tevel, meaning if I planted something after the Gemar Malacha, where you can't even have a snack, an onion, and I put it into the ground, and it grew, new growth. How much? A lot more. That will never have a time when you can snack from it, even before it is koidem gemar malacha, because it came from a tevel that shenigmar malachtoi. And not only do we say that by gedulei tevel, that gedulei tevel, b'davar she'ein zarei kala, but gedulin, took it out of the ground and you put it in the ground again, because some of the original is always going to be there. Look inside the Tapra Rashirilio. Right? Even before the meruach of this new growth. Why? Because there is a tevel that already reached Gemar Malachim, the original of the original. The kiven, the ein zarei kala. We say chashiv as if it is, not as if it's be'en. It's still here. Yaval. I want to know by us, by our parents, by our grandparents. Well, is it davar shezarei kala or davar she'ein zarei kala? For sure, davar she'ein zarei kala. My father for sure would say that. Get out of the way. He's here. Yeah. When you put seeds in the ground, almost all zurayim, when you put them to the ground, it completely decomposes. The Alter Rebbe says that the people should know this. I don't care what the goyim say. The way the emes is that the apple tree does not come from the seed. B'chlal not. In the earth, there is a koyach ein soif of giving forth everything that Hashem gave forth in Sheshes Yemei Bereshis. Not an apple tree, all of the trees. Let's say Hashem made, 1 million trees, types. Every earth has bekoyach, all of the million. What does the seed do? The seed stimulates from the earth the apple. The apple comes from the earth. It doesn't come from the seed. And what happens? The seed rots. It becomes decomposes complete. If the seed doesn't completely decompose, then the new apple tree won't even be good. And this is a mashal that everything comes from the Oibishter. Well, when we do something, we're doing a mitzvah where the good is not coming from my mitzvah. It's coming from the Oibishter. This stimulates it.
Is there something in our color?
Yes, what very few. Davar she'ein zarei kala for sure are onions, and we'll see in our Mishnah itself. The Mishnah will give examples. Onions, according to some opinions, garlic, according to other, we'll see. Very few products. So that's a big nafkamid. Now, Frekte Mishnah, Ezu Davar she'ein zarei kala. It's very rare. Almost all seeds decompose. Says the Mishnah, going aluf. Guys, whoever learned Yerushalmi, we had enough about the luf. We had a lot about the luf. Here, Kevin is going to put up his luf pictures. And Hashum v'habasala. And the last line of the Mishnah is something that is subject to a huge machloikas rishonim. Let's read the words. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, Hashum kisa'oirim. Chevra, two complete different ways of understanding Rabbi Yehuda. Yakir, you got to wake up, make a push-up, make a jump, and smile. Thank you. That either the pshat of Rabbi Yehuda is, Rabbi Yehuda is telling you that garlic decomposes. Now, why does he say kisa'oirim? Ki'ilu, he's using sa'oirim as the face of a seed that decomposes. Why sa'oirim? It's not clear. And that will be very difficult, because then it's going to chap that the Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim are arguing b'mitzias, whether when you put a garlic in the ground, whether it decomposes or whether it doesn't. That is never that difficult, because what we always say is, must be that there's something about the garlic that it decomposes a little bit less. And there's a machlekes and halacha whether that less is significant or not. That's normally the way, but it's still not ideal. The Rash, the edition, Rabbeinu Shimshon in the Mishnayos, says no. Says Rabbi, because he's wondering why kisa'oidim. He can say Hashum Zari Kala. That's what he should have said. Says the Rash, that what? This is Gavaldik. When do we say that garlic does not decompose if the garlic that you planted was at least in the size of a barley? But if you had nothing of a garlic, if it didn't even reach the size of a sa'odim, even though sometimes it's still going to be moiled, but there it's going to decompose. That's the pshat. What garlic do the Chachamim say, davar she'ein zari kala, if it's the size of the sa'odim? That's a whole different pshat than Rabbi Yehuda. And we'll leave more for the Gemara. Okay. So what we have today, and let's get moving, we have today the Mishnah saying Gedulei Truma Truma, but like we mentioned, aber nicht, not by Tevel, not by Meiserisha, not by Svichi Shvias, not by Trumas Chutzlaretz, not by Meduma, not by Bikurim, and in another clause, not Gedulei Hegdish and not Meiser Sheni. Why not? Why not? Okay, so before we get into the why not, first of all, says the Gemara that Tani Allah, we learned in a Braisa, you see, our Mishnah only made the nafkamina shleima by Tevel. By Tevel, and also you have to understand that the wisdom of Rabbeinu HaKadosh is so beyond us. It's almost like when you learn Chumash. It's a seichel aliki. It's not organized the way a human being would organize it. Look how the Rebbe Rabbeinu HaKadosh is going back and forth. First he tells you the dinim, then he tells you the din of the rose, then he goes back to Tevel, and he qualifies, Tevel is only b'davar shezari kala. The Braisa was more mesuder. It's more human, less godly. When the Braisa began, the way the Mishnah began, that Gedulei Truma Truma, Avol, not, and all of the items we mentioned, the Braisa right away said, that's only b'davar shezari kala. Avol b'davar she'ein zari kala. This is regarding, my friends, all of the items that we learned in the Mishnah. All of these items. Then we say Gidulem are still asurim, like we read in the Rashirilio, because some of the original is still be'en. Amazing. This is important. And Aviv, at least the way I currently understand, not midoraisa. Actually, even bedavar she'ein zari kala, what comes out is considered new biblically. It's only rabbinically that it's considered like the original. And that's why the Mishnah gets to say by Hegdish and Ma'aser Sheni, even bedavar she'ein zari kala, that you only have to redeem, as we mentioned, the original. Now the question is why? Farvaz. That's the big question. So let's go one case. All of this, guys, if you're going to learn, like we mentioned in the Hagdama, Rab Chanina, it's not going to go. It's not going to go. We're going only with Rava here. Why is Gedulei Truma Truma, Aviv? Because we are afraid that when the kohen will get his Truma, if it will become Tamei, the kohen will tell himself, why should I almost waste the Truma Tameya? Because he's not allowed to eat it. He can only use it for fuel. Why should I do that? Let me make more use of it. What's the more use? Plant it. Since when you plant something midoiraisa, bedavar shezari kala, it's no longer here. Right? It's not going to be here anymore. So then what comes out will be tevel. Having tevel is a lot better than using fuel Hashem did not make kernels for fuel. He made it to eat. You're like your chaval. You take $100 bill and you put it in the fireplace for fuel. What are you doing? Put paper. Don't put a dollar bill. So he's going to want to plant it. That would make sense. And so what? So what is that a person by accident will end up eating it? If you leave truma tameya hanging around your house, you might end up eating it. Al derech chametz on Pesach, we say. The reason why you have to write the first toisvus over there in Pesachim, because the loy bedilimine, because it's mutter the whole year. Because a kohen eats truma, he might by accident there'll be a mishal that'll eat it.
So if you leave it out for so long, he has to wait
to plant it. He was going to wait to plant it. So since that's the reason, the Gemara right away says avol tevel. Think about it. A person has tevel. What would be the motivation to plant tevel? In other words, when I have truma tamei, I'm motivated. Why am I motivated? Because if I'm not going to plant it, there's nothing I can do with all of it. All of it has to be burnt. That's it. By tevel, separate the truma sumaisris. Why do you have to go through the trouble of planting it? And by the way, when you plant it, what comes out is weiter tevel. It's not like if I plant a tevel, what will grow? It'll be right away like in chutz la'aretz. I can take it and eat it. Forget about the achilas sarei. No, it's why. Oh, very good. So Rav Mendel is saying a person has tevel. You can't even snack. So to say that for the person to be able to snack, doesn't make sense. Just tithe it. And because after you tithe it, ruba will be permissible not only to snack, to eat. Abel tevel sin sheruba chulin, and so therefore there's no reason to make that takana. What's the next case? The Mishnah gave the next case is Ma'aser Rishon. Same thing. What was the issue of Ma'aser Rishon? Ma'aser Rishon, you're not allowed to snack from it. You're not allowed to snack from it. Even, by the way, if I began to tithe, Higdimu b'shibalin, even though there was no Gemar Malacha, once I begin to separate the Trumas U'Maiseres, from that point on, I'm already not allowed to snack. The same thing. So the Levi has the Ma'aser Rishon, he can't even snack, and he planted it. You might have thought what grows, vaday tevel, but maybe you should never be allowed to snack. No. We don't say that. You know why? Because the whole reason why Geduli Truma is because we don't want the kohen to plant it. There might be a michshel. But why would he want to plant it? He'll want to plant it because he can't eat any of it. Same thing with the Ma'aser Rishon. Even though he can't snack from it, separate the 10% and you can eat the rest. Ma'aser Rishon, again, since Sheru by Chulin, a person will not leave it hanging around. Now, by the way, there's always a mikshel. If you're going to leave the Ma'aser Rishon hanging around, then first of all, Ma'aser Rishon, there's a machlekes tanoim, but we don't go with that it's a kodesh. We say Ma'aser Rishon is chulin. But before you remove Trumas Ma'aser, no one can eat from it. So you're going to leave, if you didn't separate the Trumas Ma'aser, you're going to leave it hanging around. Someone might eat it by mikshel. No one is going to leave it to plant to save themselves the trouble of what? Separate the Trumas Ma'aser and eat it. Next goes Svichei Shvius. We didn't make that takana by Svichei Shvius because she'ein mitzuyin. We have the words in the
by Shvius. We also have the Indian of parrot and when you sell the parrot, the parrot, the kedusha travels to the
That's
man.
right.
So
That's right. So but one second, Svichei Shvius is worse than that. Svichei Shvius cannot be eaten at all. So here we have to give another explanation. If I have Svichei Shvius and Nidraban and I can't eat it at all, Yakir, maybe that's a motivation to plant it. And maybe there will be a michshel because while I'm waiting to plant it, someone will forget that it's Svich and eat it. So that we can't give that, not Rubei Chulin, it's completely Yasser. So the Gemara has to give another answer. In the normal words that we have in Chazal is Milsa de Shchicha le Gozer Bei Rabbanan. That's the normal words. That's what the Gemara is saying over here. In other words, Svichim are not that common. I don't know what it means. It's not that common. I'm not a farmer. I would think that on the Shvius here, there's a lot of Svichim. Maybe by the fact that it's only once in 7 years. I don't know what the meaning of uncommon. It's not Shchiche liked by Truma, however that means. Now another din. What about Trumas Chutz La'aretz? So the Gemara is going to say something that will only be understood if we have to insert the new information. And that is that Gdulei Truma was only said if you planted it in Eretz Yisrael. If you have Trumas Chutz La'aretz that was if that was planted in Chutz La'aretz, for that they never made the Gezerah, which makes sense. You know why? Because Trumas Chutz La'aretz, to begin with, is a Darabanan. Gedulei Truma is weiter, is a double Darabanan. So 1 second. But what happens, Aviv, if you were to take Trumas Chutz La'aretz and plant it in Eretz Yisrael? At least in Eretz Yisrael, we should have made a loy plug. That's what the Gemara is addressing. And for that, the Gemara says, Utrumas Chutz La'aretz is not Mitsuya, which means it's not common that someone will bring Trumas Chutz La'aretz in the land of Israel and plant it in the land of Israel. We wouldn't say that for Trumas Chutz La'aretz, B'chutz La'aretz. How is it Ein Mitsuya? It's like any other Truma. Some of our foods become Tameh. But to have that, to ship it into Israel, and then, in other words, it's a given already that Trumas Chutz La'aretz, that's planted B'chutz La'aretz, we never said Gedulei Truma, because it's a double D'Rabban. Trumas Aretz and Chutz La'aretz, same thing. They only made this Gezerah for that which is planted in Eretz Yisrael. It has to be that. Next case is Meduma. So here again, here we can go back to the first answer. Why didn't Chazal make the takana by Meduma? Because Meduma is Rubai Chulin. Let me tell you what I mean by that. 1 second. There's something, let's go back to what we learned. The need of having 100 to 1 is a din d'Rabbanan. Mido Oiraisa. Now we're not talking about Meduma that's 50-50. And that's what they tackle all say. That if it's a biblical meduma, if you planted, it's going to be a meduma and a chanami. But that's not normally the case. Normally the case is that since you have to have 100 to 1, you don't have 100 to 1, but you have a roiv of chulin. Since midoi rice, it's completely permissible. That will be the meaning over here of shurubei chulin. So it's a gzeira ligzeira. That's the way we learn over here. And then we have bikurim. So here again, what's the reason for bikurim? Why don't we say geduli bikurim? Because she'enon mitzuyim. Now, why is it enon mitzuyim? So here, the enon mitzuyim that Rashi Elio says is because bikurim to begin with is only on the shivas haminim. In other words, it's not such a common. Most things that grow are b'chalal ad bikurim. Since it's only by the shivas haminim, that's why it's called enough enon mitzuyim milsadul shchicha. I'm just pointing out the problem with Svichei Shvius, because Svichei Shvius is not limited to the Shivas Aminim. True, we learn there are some exceptions. Not all Svichim are Asur. Svichim, that there is no chashash that you would plant and say it happened by itself. They didn't make the takana. But anyways, I have a question. Okay. Now the Mishnah made a new clause. Same din, new clause, which is Gedulei Hegdish and Omaiser Sheni. So first of all, the Mishnah says we don't say Gedulei Hegdish Hegdish. We don't say Gedulei Ma'aser Sheni. We do say it's Chulin. Oh, but there's a however. However is Upai Denoisam. You have to redeem that which you planted, but only that which you planted. Bisman Shezaram, according to the time. Now, what does it mean according to the time? So we said something in the Mishnah. According to the time means, I just gave simple. You planted 1 saw of Hegdish. Now you have grown 10 saw of Hegdish. What do you have to redeem? Only the 1 saw. The Gemara is going to say that's not enough for the Mishnah to use the words Bisman Shezarim. The Mishnah for that would have said Kishir Shezarim. Bisman Shezarim is teaching you another din. What we said is correct. You only have to redeem the original 1 saw. But what's the Bisman Shezarim? Ababo says B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan. It means Poide Eskol Ha'oitzer B'Dmei Oisa Sa'am. No, I take back. That's exactly what it means. It's not
the value.
No, yeah, I know, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying it's about the quantity. It's about the quantity. Not the price. Not the price. Again, we said good. Even though you would think from the word bisman, it has to do with what happens if it costs X amount then and it costs a different amount. No, not that. The Mishnah only means the amount. That's what Rabbi Yechanan says. Okay.
It does sound like the value, Rabbi.
I know that. But that's not what they're saying over here. All of the noise kelim, fakert. Okay. Now let's speak about value. Now comes a new shtickle. But before we come to this new shtickle, the reason why the Mishnah separated Geduli Hegdesh and Ma'aser Sheni, it's important, is because all of the cases in the beginning, Tevel and Ma'aser Rishon and V'chulei, all of that is only B'davar Shezari Kala. B'davar She'ein Zari Kala, all what grows has the restrictions of what you planted. By Hegdesh or Ma'aser Sheni, the Mishnah says Beferish Akula. Even if it's B'davar She'ein Zari Kala, this is important, you don't have to redeem all of it. You only have to redeem the original amount. So first of all, the Mishnah puts them together because they are equal, that we're not machalek between Zari Kala and Zari Kala. But the Gemara is going to say, but I want you to know that Hegdesh and Ma'aser Sheni are not the same. And I'm going to show you how they themselves are different one from the other. And here we go. Hefresh bein Hegdesh and Ma'aser Sheni, there is a difference, a given, bein davar shezari kala, ubein davar she'ein zari kala. I'm sorry, Ma'aser Sheni, which is by Ma'aser Sheni. Like we mentioned, we don't make a difference. It does decompose, it doesn't decompose. When you redeem it, now we're learning a new din. Chavra, just to know the din. When you have to redeem Ma'aser Sheni, all items have two prices. Prior to the Persians negotiating and after the Persian, I'm just kidding. The two prices is wholesale and retail. These are two prices. And the rule of Ma'aser Sheni is that you never have to redeem it retail. That's a klal. Hegdish were a lot more machmir. So by Ma'aser Sheni, that's called Sha'ar Hazoel. Yakir, maybe that's the may. Maybe now Gemara is saying something about the value. It's Ma'aser Sheni consistent with the way all Ma'aser Sheni is redeemed. You never have to pay retail price. So first of all, but on the other hand, Ella means there is a difference between Zari Kala and not Zari Kala. Davar Shezari Kala, if the seed decomposed, Nifta Bishar Shu Oimed Boy. Today's wholesale price, now we're getting into the Bisman. Today's, because what you planted decomposed. So this is like a gzeira, like Chachamim says you can't get away with it. Pay now. But davar she'ein zari kala. But if you planted the onion, you don't have to redeem the whole onion. I got that. But you have to redeem the quantity that you put into the ground. But what number do you give? Nifda bishar harishain. Gewalt. You have to know what was the wholesale price when you planted it. That's the bisman. That's b'dmei bisman shazaran. But I also understand Rabbi Yochanan. Since the Mishnah was not machalik, the only consistent bisman is quantity. Because if bisman would have meant yakir, the time, then how can Rabbi use that word when it depends? It depends. Not true. It depends. Zari kola ain't zari kola. Anyways, Atkan Ma'aser Sheni. Nuances. Now let's go to the Hegdish. By Hegdish, Bein Davar Shezari Kolem, Bein Davar She'ein Zari Kolem. In both, first of all, you never have to redeem more than what you planted. That's a kula. But on the other hand, Ein Loi Elam Ukayim V'Shaitoi. That's a rule when it comes to all Hegdish. Hegdish is redeemed whenever you redeem it. You know how you redeem it? You don't redeem it wholesale. You have to redeem it retail, and retail from where you are right now. We'll never go back to that time. Avol, but still, davar shezari kole, if the seed decomposed, then poides kole oitzer only b'dmei oitzer shasuzara. You only have to go back to the original. But by hegdish, not by Ma'aser Sheni, but the davar she'ein zari kole. By hegdish nishay pashet. If you planted hegdish and it did not decompose, here we're going to be machmer, which is poides kol ha'oitzer, not the way we said in the Mishnah. In other words, hegdish and Ma'aser Sheni are equal. That in many aspects, we don't differentiate between davar shezari kol and davar she'ein zari kol, but they're not mamish the same. And the final line is very important. Just want to correct what I said before. In other words, by hegdish, the davar she'ein zari kol, since it's hegdish, not only do you have to redeem it, but you have to be paida all of the tensa. So hegdish is a lot more stricter than Ma'aser Sheni. Baruch Hashem, we finished the daf, and that's good because that's a whole sugya. And tomorrow we're going to go into this whole din of you have rows, echad b'meya, meya be'echad, l'kula u'l'chumra, God willing, to be continued. This was a good daf, Chevra. Yeah, I know, but this was good. Good, got it. Yeah, a lot of details. I just want to say, whoever's learning Rambam, you have no idea how much we're going to understand the Rambam better. I'm Amish. I should have taken it today. I was learning certain dinim. You can see how he came there sometimes, which is great.